Hey there everyone, Doug here with B&H. Today we're looking at a new lens for the Sony E-mount. This is the Tamron 150-500mm f5 to 6.7 di III VXD. Always a mouthful with these model numbers. As you can see, it's a zoom lens with a maximum 500mm telephoto zoom, making it ideal for street photographers who need a long zoom range, dramatically compressed portraiture, and even wildlife. A zoom lens like this is meant to cover a lot of ground and faces the challenge of balancing speed, AF performance, and overall size and weight. Let's see how it fares. A zoom range like this should immediately tell you one thing: distant subjects. On the wide end of things, you're already at 150mm, meaning you could use this for intimate portraits or anything outdoors that's just a little farther away than you might want. An example that comes to mind is a live performance or stage. Deeper into the zoom range, however, and you'll be able to capture subjects such as wildlife and distant structures across the horizon. Now, there are some limitations to this. At f5 to 6.7, this isn't the fastest lens around. But in outdoor situations, this shouldn't be much of an issue. This ISO 6400 shot, for example, shot with the Sony a7R IV, still looks clean and sharp, letting the lens shine even out of direct sunlight. About the only situation where I can't see this lens really working out is high-speed sports. That said, it works beautifully for most activities, keeping up with cyclists as shown here. One does have to understand that for a lens that reaches 500mm, this is actually on the smaller side. With 25 elements in 16 groups, the Tamron 150-500 is designed to maximize optical image quality, and it shows. The extra low dispersion and low dispersion elements keep chromatic aberrations to a minimum, and the broadband anti-reflection Generation 2, or BBAR-G2 for acronym lovers, helps reduce ghosting and flare, which is often an issue for telephoto lenses at the far end. Luckily, this lens delivers even in tricky backlit conditions with beautiful contrast all around. It's a gorgeous day outside, and Prospect Park is always a great spot to capture people in their element and nature at its finest. It's also a great spot to test autofocus, as there are bicycles abound. Thanks to the VXD, or Voice Coil Extreme Torque Drive linear motor, AF response is fast and accurate. And with a 500mm, the precise separation and focus that you'll get is truly stunning at times. The lens is sharp edge to edge, and I was surprised by just how much fine detail could be found in some shots. If you zoom 100% into this shot, you can see the faintest drops of water flinging off the goose's wings. Now, I won't pretend that this lens is lightweight. Zoom lenses of this reach usually have stabilizers built in, and that's no different here. The vibration compensation, as they call it, has multiple modes that we'll get into in a second, but needless to say, I was able to carry and aim the lens in all sorts of positions all afternoon. The stability and AF performance combined meant that even low contrast subjects, such as these turtles, remained in focus with minimal effort. But what are the actual dimensions of this lens? When compressed down to 150mm, the lens is 209.6mm from mount to filter thread, not including lens hood. At its full 500mm extension, you're looking at about 283mm in length. Without the tripod mount, the lens weighs 1,725 grams or 3.8 pounds. Not the worst given the reach, but it's something to keep in mind when shooting for extended periods of time. The tripod mount, which is included by the way, is 155 grams, and you'll definitely want it to take the weight off the lens mount when on a tripod. Let's get back to the stabilizer, or vibration compensation as it's called. There are two switches related to stabilization here, one to simply enable or disable it, and the other to switch between the three modes. Tamron recommends mode 1 as the standard mode, presumably useful for the majority of situations. Mode 2 is recommended exclusively for panning, while mode 3 is recommended for composition and framing. I have to admit, I learned through trial and error, the hard way, the difference between modes 2 and 3, because my earlier burst shot of the cyclist, using mode 3, was less steady than my later burst sequence using mode 2. Mode 3 is definitely more rigid in its stabilization, which is really nice for composing distant shots, but it counteracts panning and tilting motions quite a bit, and you'll feel this. You'll find your frame moves a lot less, but might jerk a bit when you make a sudden movement. Mode 2, however, loosens things up a bit so that it doesn't fight the intentional movement of a pan, but it isn't nearly as steady for static framing. At 150mm, you'll have a minimum focusing distance of 23.6 inches, or just under 60 centimeters, which is pretty good. I admittedly didn't take many photos at 150, but at 500mm, the results are still very impressive. Minimum focus can be achieved at only 70.9 inches, or 180 centimeters, which lets you get super detailed close-ups like this. Designed for the Sony E-mount, the lens works very well with the A7R4's AF system and uses an 82mm filter thread. The lens hood is also included, of course, which probably helped keep flare out on this sunny afternoon. Overall, I'm impressed. I had a blast capturing some up-close moments with this lens, and it's perfect for a wide variety of shooters. Now, like I said, only the most demanding of high-speed capture is out of this lens's reach, but being able to get a 500mm zoom in this size is really special. It's been nice to see Tamron putting out lenses like this that trade some speed for a long-reaching zoom range that, a few years ago, you wouldn't really be able to get away with. With modern cameras offering such amazing low-light performance and sensitivity, the optics themselves can remain razor-sharp and bring something like a 500mm into more people's hands. So that's it for the Tamron 150-500mm f5 to 6.7 di III VXD zoom lens. I'm Doug with B&H, and I'll see you next time.